It's Ebro in the Morning. Laura Stiles Rosenberg's on vacation. We have Dr. Nadia Lopez in with us today.
Yay.
Brownsville.
Yes.
I first heard of you on, I think, which is like most people heard of you, on the Instagram account, Humans of New York.
Yes.
And they specialize in bringing human stories through Instagram from just New York. But your story obviously caught everyone because it's not a story that many of us get to hear frequently, or as frequently as we'd like to hear, where at a public school, not a charter school, not a private school,
Right.
but at a public school, an administrator has taken it upon themselves to save their kids and their school. And not only through extra work, but financially speaking. Right? Like you're putting up your own money and you're going to the local community and doing fundraisers and holding local politicians accountable and like doing the like real grind work, right? So that's how we heard of you the first time. What am I leaving out of that story that I want to make sure the audience shares? Because there's a lot more there, right?
There definitely is a lot more, but it's not just me. I have a dynamic team, and it takes a lot of work to put that together because everybody will show up and see the name, see a small school, see uniforms, and think the kids are going to be perfect, and they're not. They still live in Brownsville. They're still kids.
Of course,
they're
yeah.
middle school, and so they have challenges that you can't even imagine. So as much as I try to get the best individuals in, it's also about if this is not the right place, you got to go. You can't stay because to me, it's generational genocide if we steal from our kids, if we're not being proactive.
Say that again. Say that. I think people need to hear that. Generational genocide.
Yeah, it's definitely generational genocide. And the reason why I say that is because the minute we don't educate our children, then they won't be able to educate the next generation. And so what you see,
killing ourselves.
We're killing ourselves. And what we see in that community is that people think that the residents, the families, they want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. No one wakes up in the morning saying, I don't want to learn. I just want to be broke every day. Nobody wants to go through that. But they haven't been given the examples and the support that they need on a consistent basis. So how does Brownsville become like one of the richest places where there's a lot of money being poured into it in terms of organizations, or a lot of people cite the data because the data is real. If only 32% of the kids are graduating high school and only 14% actually have a college degree, then you can say these children are failing. So you get a lot of people who get money, grants, but then they're not all consistently showing up. So there's really, really great organizations.
Stop right there.
Yes.
So you're saying today in Brownsville, there's a lot of money going into that community.
There's a lot of money that goes into the community in terms of organizations that may say that they do the work, right? So,
and where's that money coming from? The state government, federal
comes
government, private?
All different sources. So it could be state, private. You apply for grants. But the reality is that the work, the consistency of getting the money and the consistency of staying to do the work is not always going hand in hand. So the struggle for a lot of us who are leading schools in Brownsville is that we end up having to do the work. We have to be consistent.
And how do you hold these people who basically use the circumstances of the community to make money and use it however frivolously they feel? How can you guys hold them accountable, or can you?
And also, how do you monitor all of this? Because you're also busy being, a professor and trying to take care of these children. But how do you monitor? Because I could imagine that there's grants and money coming from all over. I was like, it's not your job to monitor where all this money is going.
So I can't. Right? That's why I'm constantly in my building doing what I need to do all hours of the night. I literally will get there, let's say 7:30 in the morning, and I'll stay at work till 9, 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes I'm leaving with the custodian at midnight. It's going to do, it requires whatever it's going to take. I'm there Monday through Sunday. So I go to church in the morning, and then I go right to the office. So I'll stay there from 11 till 5 or 6 o'clock when the custodian is like, it's time to go, Miss Lopez. Just because you have to be dedicated. So when you ask the question of how it gets done, there are a lot of educators who are trying. We try every single day, but the needs are so profound. And when you have children who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorders, abandonment, abuse, poverty in general. They don't have the money to sustain themselves. It's just about surviving. And that's why sometimes I say it's not about saving them. They survive. Like things that they have to go through. When I pass, let's say 10 o'clock at night by the housing projects and there's floodlights, right? That's just bright. I'm thinking to myself, how do you sleep at night? Or the sound
Those
of
NYPD towers is
yeah.
just up there.
And it's constant. And they're constantly being reminded of this is how we live. And it's their children. They're individuals. They're like, they should be respected. So when I got there.
And for the people watching this, wherever you are tuned in, here in New York City, a lot of times in the housing projects, when the police have basically turned your projects into a police state because of whatever's happening in the buildings or
Yes.
people they're trying to get to move out or gangs, drug dealing, et cetera, it'll be 11 o'clock at night and those big-ass police lights are on your
Yes.
building like a spotlight.
It is.
So that nobody can hide in the stairwells and nobody can hide in the buildings.
It's literally a spotlight.
It's a
It
spotlight on your entire building. And then they have this big NYPD, and they may have this in other cities, I don't know, but they have this big NYPD like
like a
police
tower.
tower
The
that
tower.
goes up high and sirens on that. And then you have just sirens and police cars constantly patrolling the area.
And so I work really well with the 73rd Precinct. They looked out for my kids. If there's ever an issue, they come and they sit and we do interventions because I'm all about let's develop the relationship that's going to help the scholar as opposed to saying you're going to end up going to jail. They actually come in and they help out. And I would ask them, like, why do we need to have these floodlights? And they were like, honestly, crime has been down. So it's like, do we not have the floodlights? And it's an increase in crime and people are fearful, or do we have them and try to minimize? And I'm like, the reality is this is what they have to live with. But when children get to school, it impacts them emotionally.
Yeah, they haven't slept well.
Right.
They
They're
feel
exhausted.
under attack.
Right.
They, hate where they live. They're ashamed, et cetera, et cetera.
So we create a space that's dope, right? Like it's purple and cream when you come on our floor. It's just calm. It's a space that says you're invited so that the parents feel like they're invited. My staff feels comfortable because we're there all hours of the night.
And which school is this? We never gave the name.
Oh, so it's Mott Hall Bridges Academy in Brownsville.
And how long have you been there?
We're going into our 7th year. I opened it in 2010.
And this is a charter public.
Public district school. So
Public
it's New York
district
City
school.
Department of Education, yes.
And where are you from?
I'm from Crown Heights.
Okay. So you're from
Born and
Brooklyn.
raised, yep.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school in Bed-Stuy. So I went to PS 93. Then I was in Fort Greene at Summit Junior High School. It was a gifted and talented school. And then I went to A. Philip Randolph. Shout out to campus in Harlem. And I loved my experience. So I'm a district baby. I'm ride or die when it comes to public schools.
And how do you feel about de Blasio and Farini and just the whole structure of our city with regard to public schools today?
So, they didn't change anything. It's already been in existence.
Have they improved anything?
Yeah, but didn't de Blasio
So-
triple the budget for after school programs?
He did. So
Yeah.
we benefit from that. Our scholars get to participate in something called Sonic. It's an after-school program through Pure Elements. So literally my kids can stay till 5:30, 6 o'clock.
And Beacon
Monday
too, right?
through Friday. Yes, and there's a Beacon program in my building. So
And what's that mean?
So Beacons are these programs that are actually housed within schools, and they literally become part of the school community. And kids, not necessarily from the school that's housed in the building, can attend its school. It could be from any part of that community. So we have Oasis Beacon in our building as well, and that's partnered through Mega Everest College. So we definitely do benefit from that. Karin Farinia, she was a regent leader when I was a teacher, so I was very familiar with her. And she actually came to the school for the first time, I think in 2014, and was just amazed by what she saw and actually supported us, which is how the New York Times came to the building, and then kind of gave us exposure. And people were like, wait, this school exists? But she's been very supportive, and she actually gave power back to the superintendents now, so we don't have network structures. So with change, there's always, you got to get adapted to it. For me personally, it's just about what do I need to do to make sure everybody in my building is working effectively, efficiently, and getting what they
Right.
need. Because with every administration, it's inevitable that there's going to be change.
Can you break down the story, because I'm really curious how your students reached out to Brandon? What's his last name? The guy from Humans of New York.
Oh, they didn't reach out to him.
So
He
how did-
happened to be walking. It was Martin Luther King Day, and he happened to be in Brownsville, and he saw Vidal, and by
Vidal.
chance,
Who's
Vidal. He's the scholar who was featured.
Okay.
So he's the face that everyone saw. And he asked him. It was 2 posts. So the first post was, tell me about living in Brownsville. And he spoke about when he was 9 years old, actually seeing a man thrown off of a building.
Right.
And then the following post was, so what influences you, or who influences you? And he responded, my principal. And then he goes into the whole comment of the fact that I don't suspend the kids. I tell them about how society is built around them. And for lack of all of that, it really came down to if you progress to a point where you put the safety of others in danger, you definitely will get suspended. But there's a lot that our kids do that doesn't warrant suspension. So being defiant, it takes a lot, right? It's just they're middle school kids. So we just need to have good conversations with them and find out what's going on with their day. But I'm realistic with my kids. At the end of the day, there's a school to prison pipeline. And in Brownsville, when you think about 80% of New York State population being from areas like Brownsville, East New York.
Prison population.
Yeah, the prison population. Being from these communities, and over $3 billion being spent, well, $80 billion per year being spent on just prisons and not being flooded back into our education system, I have a problem with that. So I need to educate my kids. And so I remind them that every time you get in trouble, every time you decide you don't want to change your behavior,
1 step closer.
you're getting 1 step closer. You're not in class. You're not learning. The person who's educating you is going to feel like you're not even worth being bothered with if you keep getting kicked out of class. And so you internalize that, and you won't think that you're better enough, and you are brilliant as I see you. So what's the next outcome? You end up going to jail. And if you go to jail, you're only supporting someone else's family. You're not supporting your own, because that's how communities are built. And so from there, he was able to internalize that, as all my scholars are able to. And what happened was I host these I Matter events for my young men. But in addition to that, because that particular year, there was just so many tragedies in which there were a lot of jury indictments, but not jury indictments, right? And so I had to apologize to my kids. Like, I'm sorry. It's hard as a principal to tell your kids, I'm sorry that someone else's life was taken and there's no resolution to it. So I want you to be reminded that you matter. But I make them stand up, and I tell them, each and every one of them, that they matter. And then they have to say it 3 times. Because I believe that at this point, we all have to remind ourselves that we matter. If you can't go to a club and know that you're going to come out, if you can't go to church and know that you're going to come out safe, you can't travel anymore.
Gotta
You
remind
have to
yourself
remind
you have
yourself.
value.
Yeah, you have to affirm it to yourself. So I have to do that for them. That's why I call them Brownsville Brilliance. And I remind them that your community, it doesn't necessarily define what your next steps are going to be. It actually is saying that you're resilient, right? That's how diamonds are built. They're resilient.
Tough.
And they made it. So that's what you are. So my kids have their T-shirts that say they're Brownsville Brilliance, and they're reminded. That's our hashtag, and I love them for that.
So you have a book,
Yes.
The Bridge to Brilliance.
Yep.
In this book, I'm sure you detail all of this.
Yes.
But do you go a step further? Because, watching you and hearing you speak, I can tell that you take your work personally.
I do.
It's not just work. It's not just a job.
It's not. I have my daughter here, and at the end of the day, what I do for my scholars is what I expect somebody to do for her, and what somebody did for me. My parents, I always say, are not from this country, and so they put me in the school system expecting that when they chose a particular school, that the school environment, the community, the teachers were there to protect me and to educate me. And
to push you.
And
to
to
hold
push
you
me.
accountable.
Hold me accountable.
Yeah.
Hold them accountable. Right? So if something happened, someone needed to contact my mom and explain to her what's going on in the school. I remember one time I failed the test. My mother was like, I don't understand any of this. It was a pulleys. I remember it was a pulleys test. I got a 30. I never get that. she took off. My mom never would take off. She went to the principal, was like, I need to speak to this teacher because she has a 30 on the exam. And he was like, well, maybe something happened. No, then nothing happened. She didn't teach her. I asked her. She says they didn't review. They didn't get homework. They didn't do anything. We met with the teacher. The teacher said, no, I just gave him a test. And she was like, no, you need to redo it. Like, I don't care what is going to require that, because I know she can do better than that. And we the entire class ended up failing. We all took the test over and we got 80 or more because we were like the top class. And the principal in that moment was like, well, why would you have done that? She was like, I just wanted to see where they were at. But my mother felt like the minute she starts to fail and you think it's okay, she's going to think like she's not good enough. So no, I'm not. I don't have to be from this country to understand this is not right. So I do that because with my daughter, I expect the teacher to go 1,000% for her. And if they don't, no one likes me coming into the building. They're just like, oh my God. Because I don't want to be principal in that moment. But if I have to be, there's questions I have, like I need to understand, how did you support her? I need to understand what specifically, is she struggling? When did you send the paper home for me to understand that? And then they're like, well, I kept it in a folder. I don't see the folder.
Right.
I don't know what that folder
What's
looks
in that
like.
folder? And, my parents always taught me early on that folder travels with you through your academic career. That folder where your scores and your behavior and all your incidents and your name and your social security numbers all in that folder.
Yep.
I've never seen my folder before, but I knew that there was one where they keep tabs on your behavior to decide if they're going to route your life this way or if they're going to route your life that way.
Right.
Are they going to put you with the people who behave and achieve, or are they going to put you with the people who don't?
Right.
Right? And I feel like a lot of parents don't even know that that's happening to their youth. That's not common knowledge.
And that's why I always tell parents, you just have to show up. Even just, you don't have to know all of the curriculum. It's impossible. I don't know all of the curriculum, and I'm a principal. But if you sit in a classroom, you know what you're expecting for your children. 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with parents, and before I even went into, the great things about Mott Hall Bridges Academy and who I was, my first question was, so what are your expectations about the school? And they kind of just looked at me, and I said, I need to know what your expectations are. And I said, I'm going to give you a minute, because I understand no one ever asks you what it is you want. We're here to service you. We have the knowledge, but if you don't know what to expect, people will give you whatever, because they're going to make executive decisions. So the next time someone asks you, you need to be able to articulate, I expect that the teachers are going to care. I expect my child to learn. I expect. And so the parents were like, oh yeah, well, I expect this, I expect that. And you recognize that they've never been asked. They're not part of that process. So we like to tell them what they need to know. We like to tell them what their kids are going to learn. Yes, because we're the gatekeepers of that information. But they also need to understand that when you leave me in middle school, you're going to have to go to high school. So when you go to high school, what's your expectations? When they go to college, what's your expectations? And we're teaching the kids to advocate for themselves, because if your parent don't know, then there's not an excuse that you don't know.
That's right.
So we have to do that. We prepare them for high school from 6th grade.
Wow.
Dr. Nadia Lopez, The Bridge to Brilliance is out August 30th. We have it here early. I want to ask you, how many people, I see Robin Roberts here. I know that Black Girls Rock gave you a Change Agent Award alongside Michelle Obama.
Yes.
What's happening now that you have this documented evidence of your success and who you are as an individual and what you're willing to give to not only your daughter, but to a community to make sure that they have expectations that are high?
Yes.
Who are you speaking to now about sharing this blueprint, this energy, this path? Like who are your colleagues? Who are your equals in our public education system, not only locally here in New York, because I'm sure parents want to know other public schools like yours where teachers and the administration is this involved in holding people this accountable and the expectations is high, but even nationally. What is the public school conversation right now? Because I hear from charter schools, I hear from people who have given up on the public education system or taking matters into their own hands. And
Right.
I just want to know where this is going.
So honestly, I can't really give you a definitive answer of where it's going. It was my answer to people are always asking, how do you get it done? And there's no easy answer
And that's
to
what
it.
the book is about.
The book is just basically following the journey of what it took to make it happen. And it
Right, but
wasn't
where are
easy.
the other yous? You guys don't, there's not a
No,
whole
there's-
like crew of y'all that we can be like, see them, talk
No,
to
she
them.
has a team.
I have a team of educators in my building, but I'm gonna be honest. When I went into leadership, I went through a program called New Leaders, and the reason why I chose New Leaders is because it was a national program, and for me specifically, I wanted to know what education looked like beyond New York City. Is this happening in all of the urban schools? Is this happening in low income communities? Like, what's going on? And
And
I
by
was
urban,
able-
you mean inner city, not just black.
Right, not just black. Because the same thing happens in rural communities, and we don't talk about them. So
And it's usually because they're poor. And,
yep,
right.
and it's the same circumstances. So they get overlooked, and I ended up going to Tennessee. We traveled to Baltimore, Prince George's County, Newark, Louisiana, and it was just amazing to see. It's the same issues. It's the same struggles. And my cohort members, it was like we were superheroes. Everybody believed that we can improve the lives of these children. And New Leaders gave us like the best of the best. So John Safier, who wrote the book on how to write notes, like we write copious notes on what we see in the classroom, or Paul Bambrick Santoyo, who is the data king. And he's actually part of North Star, which is a charter school. But what he did in terms of how you look at data is amazing.
Data of kids,
Data
scholastic
of kids,
performance.
scholastic performance, but just data in general, like how you could just look at attendance, how you can just look at how many kids are in a particular class. Like, it's just data doesn't just necessarily mean just looking at the numbers in terms of the test. Just being in a classroom, you could collect data. John King was one of my, who's now the U.S. Secretary of Education, gave a workshop on how you hire the best people in your building. And so they gave us insight and access to the best in the business. And so from that, I was able to see, like, this is all possible. But you just have to be around like-minded people. If you're around the naysayers who are just always like, yeah, that can happen, but, you know, these kids. Once people start saying these kids,
Blaming
it's not
kids. You can't
our
blame the kids.
kids.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to have a conversation. So
And so,
shout out to them.
And so
Leaders.
I'm told by people who also are in education, because I think, some of my passion is helping children find a path, right? I feel like our school system is kind of a one-size-fits-all.
Yes.
And a lot of people in the public school system get lost because maybe the way they learn or their interests aren't
Are different.
highlighted or different
Right.
or fit this one-size-fits-all world. And sometimes I feel like we like spiritually and creatively castrate kids. It's like, yo, if you don't learn like this, then something's wrong with you. I feel like
Right.
that's a big problem that we have. But I'm also told that teachers' unions have caused like a standoff, if you will, in holding teachers accountable in the classrooms. Meaning, if a teacher is just not all the way involved, not all the way engaged, like the story you told about the test, a teacher like that may not be able to be held accountable because they can't get fired because they're protected by the teachers' union, even if their performance or their students' performance is below average or failing. We can't get them out of the system. Is that true? Is that false? Is that overstated? What's the...
So, I can only speak personally. I can't speak the general of what goes on in other schools. And I know that there's a great debate over it. For me specifically, my relationship with the union has always been, let's work hand in hand. Because when I had to open up the school, I had to create a committee that not only consisted of people on my team, but it also had to consist of the union representatives of that district. So because of that, I think that opening up a school and going through that process, they're just as invested in the success of the school. So anytime there's ever been an issue where there may be a teacher who isn't performing at their best, I've always been able to call upon the district rep who without fail will come in. And I would say, can you find me professional development? Can you find me a school I can send them to? Or maybe this isn't the space for them. Some people are just good at high school and they thought they were good at middle school, or they're better at elementary school. But it's like every system that exists. If we blame the Department of Education for the failure of schools, then how did Mott Hall Bridges Academy get to be the way we're able to succeed, right? It comes down to me as a leader. I'm in charge of what happens. Yes, there's a lot that I have to do in terms of adhering to policies and the procedures, but at the end of the day, I have to be the decision makers. So within the context of a system, there are individuals who are responsible for what happens next. So when we start blaming the union, it's not for me to debate, but the question is like, who are the people who are advocating for those teachers who aren't doing well, right? And how are they being held accountable for what's going on in the classroom? Are they being asked to be part of the process to see what's happening in the classroom so that we can have better conversations? Or are they just the person you go to say, I need this person removed? Because there are those people who are just like, I'm here to advocate for teachers regardless of what. But that's going to be everywhere. There's principals who are not going to stay past 3:00. There's principals who are going to just be like, you know what, I'm here to do whatever. But my colleagues that I have to work with, the things that we have to do, we try to our best to have the best relationships.
And do you feel like your leadership and your tone that you've set for the Mott Hill Academy has also caused everyone else to know that they got to step their game up as well? So it kind of all starts with you.
Yeah, it starts with me. So at Mott Hall, I believe that it started with just even telling kids that they are descendants of royalty. And so what that expectation means for them and what that means for everybody who comes in contact with you. So how do you conduct yourself? So if I expect that of you, then when someone else comes into this building, it's the same expectations. Just as my staff, I'm here to support you and respect you. If you want something, let's have a conversation. We don't have to agree on everything. We could respectfully disagree. I tell that to my parents. I can't hear if you're yelling. I can't hear anything if you're yelling. I'm here to support you. So let's sit down, let's talk, let's make a plan of action. It's just about how you present yourself, right? Some of us, we have bad days. You have to catch yourself on those bad days. Everything is not going to be at 100% because life happens, but you're dealing with people. And so at the end of the day, I come from the mentality also of working in corporate, right? That I worked for Verizon, the phone company, the one that account collections. I don't care what the customer did. They will always tell us the customer is always right. So what do you need to do to appease this customer because you need to get that money to pay that bill? So when I think about the fact that a parent chose a school or some of them didn't choose the school, they put their kids in a school, I'm still here to provide a service. Now, you didn't know what you were getting into. I'm going to help educate you because when you leave me, I can't have your kids going to high school and failing. That's not what we're about. I'm here to support them. And because of that, I even go above and beyond. We now have an alumni association where I have to have my kids who graduated come back to ensure that they're getting support through the process of just getting into college. Right? So it's your commitment level. And I think in anything that you want to be great at, you show up. Everybody talks about NBA players. What makes them great? The greatest NBA players wake up the first to practice, stay in the gym the longest, and eat, sleep, and drink what they love, right? And that's for anything that you want to do. So for me, education is the thing I eat, drink, and sleep. And I want to be best at because if we don't support these kids, then it becomes the burden of us having to support a prison system. And I don't feel like paying for that. Or you have kids who are just not going to be able to educate the next generation.
And I think it's so important that you support the parents too, because a lot of times, especially parents that come from another country and they don't understand and feel disconnected, that's big. My parents didn't speak English when they came, so they kind of were like, okay, she's supposed to go to school. We're just going to take her there. But they definitely didn't have a connection or understood the process. So, I mean, some of us figured it out and some of us didn't.
Right.
But I think it's really important that you keep them involved and you help them not being intimidated, because there's a big intimidation factor too that people don't like to talk about, or they're embarrassed or they're not educated themselves.
And that the intimidation factor, especially for those who were born in this country, the question then becomes, how were you treated when you were in the school system, right? So if you were in a school system that didn't care, or you were, sometimes they go into buildings. I've seen it when I was a teacher, the way folks will talk to the parent. Like they start to use really big words and they start to talk to them as if you're not good enough as a parent. And so they become jaded and they don't want to be part of the process.
Of course.
And I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to be done. Because at the end of the day, these children are your responsibility.
Yeah.
And I don't need you to be in a courtroom, and I also don't need you to be in a funeral home, right? That's not when we should get together to support this family. We're a village. We do it when people are living and breathing. So let's come together. Let's make sure that we start educating our families. And that's the big thing about Brownsville. Like, I didn't choose Brownsville. God chose it for me. I love it. I think any place that you go, you make the best of what you have. The biggest issue for me is that there was just too many excuses as to why we couldn't get it done. And I wasn't about to live by that standard. I was just like, we don't have programs for the kids. Let's make it happen. I don't have the money. Let's make a phone call. You just get support. And I have great friends. I have people who are willing to step up and show up for 2 hours. I think about the time when I needed to get just uniforms for the kids. And I put out a Facebook back then, like 2010, and Beverly Bond was like, how much do you need? And she just wrote a check. You never forget those moments and those opportunities where people just say, I'm just here to help you. And so it's not about being fearful. It's about showing up. Brownsville deserves the respect because those people who were there, all of them, they're survivors. They're not asking for a handout. They're asking for opportunity and access. And that goes for any community that has children who are from low-income, disadvantaged spaces. All we need to do is just show up.
Dr. Nadia Lopez, the book, The Bridge to Brilliance, you can get it August 30th. I'm sure it's going to be everywhere. She got some of her students on the front cover.
Yes, those are my graduates.
And 7 years you've been in there.
Yes.
And it's 6, 7, 8?
It's amazing.
6th, 7th, 8th grade.
6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Yes.
Well, good for you.
Thank
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And anything we left out of this conversation, because I know you have a lot of stuff going on, and anything you need the people to know if they want to support your school, get more involved.
So Mott Hall is a middle school choice process. So usually around October, November, parents get to select. But you have to read the list really, really well because there's another Mott Hall, our sister school, which is Mott Hall 5, that is in that community as well. But
how are they doing? They doing pretty good?
We're in the same space. We're at the same place. We get our kids who have challenges and struggles academically. And the reality is that when kids start late, if they start school at 6th grade, they start school at 6 in kindergarten, that's 6 years that they haven't been reading and writing and doing what they need to. But it's committed leadership. So you can check out www.thelopezeffect.com. That's my website, and all of my social media handles is under The Lopez Effect. So you can find out where I'll be at, book touring, and all the great things that are happening and how you could support the school. Specifically, our school website is www.mhba, Mott Hall Bridges, MHBA, Brooklyn.com. And you can find out all the great stuff there. But if I could just add this one thing is that I started off by saying that my parents aren't from this country. So my mom is from Guatemala. My father is from Honduras. My grandfather was from Jamaica, and I had extended
Aren't
family.
you from Guatemala?
Yeah. Guatemala too.
Extended family from Trinidad. And at the end of the day, there's so many of us who our parents came to this country, or those of us who just reached to this country and are figuring out how to get it done. Laura Stiles, I look at you, we're examples of it can happen.
Right.
American dream is possible. It's what you take advantage of it and how you decide you want to live your life. So don't let anybody put a cap on it and say you can't make it. Don't let someone say you're a foreigner to this country or based off of your family. Be proud of your culture, celebrate it. It's what makes us all unique. And nobody who is here, unless you were a Native American, is from this country. Bottom line.
Facts. Nadia Lopez,
Nadia,
always good
you're
to see you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.